Hello and welcome to Top Tips to Decrease Coronavirus Anxiety and Improve Emotional Well-Being. Our presenter today is Dr. Debra Kissen. She is the CEO of Light on Anxiety Treatment Centers. Dr. Kissen specializes in cognitive behavioral therapy for anxiety and related disorders. Dr. Kissen is the author of the Pandemic Workbook for Teens and Rewire Your Anxious Brain for Teens, using CBT, neuroscience, and mindfulness to help end your anxiety, panic, and worry, the Instant Help Solution series, and shares information on empirically supported treatment for anxiety and related disorders. Dr. Kissen also has a special interest in the principles of mindfulness and their application for anxiety disorders. Dr. Kissen has presented her research on CBT and mindfulness-based treatments for anxiety and related disorders at regional and national conferences. With that, I'm going to hand it over to her.
Well, thank you so much. And can you hear me okay? I'm just turning down my volume, sounds a little. Okay, wonderful. So I am glad to be here and sharing some tips on decreasing coronavirus anxiety and just overall improving emotional well-being. And it's helpful to review these concepts. I am not only a clinical psychologist, but also a mom and just a busy person trying to kind of manage it all during these challenging times. And so the more I review helpful ways to improve emotional well-being, the more I can apply them as well. So instead of going into the outline, I'll just kind of jump into the first tip that I recommend is finding ways to stay socially connected, and how social distancing doesn't necessarily have to mean social isolation, but it certainly can bring about feelings of social isolation. And unfortunately, social isolation is one of the biggest predictors of depression and other mental health disorders. So it really is important to feel part of something greater than ourselves. And one of the many problems of social isolation is it's harder to get past our own thoughts and feelings because they're so big and consuming when we don't have others to share our experience with. So during this time, yes, you have to be more creative to find ways to socially connect, but in no way does that mean it's impossible. It just is more complicated. So, for example, I've worked with clients who are feeling increased feelings of depression and loneliness on finding ways to meet new people in the current world, in current modern life, and during the pandemic, and what that looks like. And so we've looked for, maybe through a website meetup, and finding different organizations that possibly offer an online a web-based book club, for example, or maybe there's web-based dance parties that can actually be really energizing and really fun. And also finding maybe some local volunteer opportunities to meet others with similar interests, but that are more outside, so that you're able to do the social distancing but still be with other people. And so, for example, I looked with a recent client and found different park cleanup opportunities, or at the local lakefront. So finding like-minded individuals and coming together can really bring positive feelings and just get us past ourselves, which is really a key factor in positive mental health. And I would say there's a lot of life milestones that we're all moving through whenever we've started moving through this pandemic, whether it was March, whenever it really hit home, wherever you're living. And so whether it's our own, whether it's our loved ones' important life events, we all have images of how things are supposed to go, or how we want them to go, or how maybe in the movies what it's supposed to look like to have a good Mother's Day. So I kind of use this opportunity of this presentation to kind of think through my own life over the last 3 months and ways that have helped me to get through the harder times. And so I'd say getting more creative with the important milestones, and also accepting that there's just different versions of what it means to have a good birthday. Maybe that's connecting with old friends that you haven't seen or heard from in quite a while, but in some ways the opportunity to use web-based Zoom or other forms of technology. I mean, I know for myself, I connected with friends who I haven't, unfortunately, had the chance to speak with in maybe years for some of them, but just having that opportunity to connect and having a new place to do that there is something special to that. Also just a little image of my Mother's Day, and thinking of maybe what I would hope it would be versus what it was. And there's still moments of joy that are possible. It's just different. Another moment that comes to mind in my own life, my daughter had her bat mitzvah a couple of weeks ago, and sort of the original idea of what it was going to be and the reality of what it was. And from sort of having a larger ceremony with friends and family coming together, but instead it was really just me and my immediate family and our religious leaders. And there was some grieving to do, but in some ways there was also something special about really removing all of the kind of song and dance and all of the aspects that sometimes take you away from the essence of what you want that event to be about. So not to be utterly glasses half full, but there is something about this time that kind of strips away a lot of the noise of our existence, and then kind of gets to what do we really want our time to be about, and what's most important, and what's worth fighting for and taking risks to have those moments. Another topic around social isolation, that thinking of the clients that I work with and what have been particularly difficult during this time is dating. And so working with clients around more creative ways to consider dating and meeting people. And once again, it's definitely complicated, but just that determination is so important. And sometimes you got to just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and you might want to give up, and you might want to say it's never going to work and I can't swipe one more time and what's the point, but really continuing to every day push yourself a little bit. If what you value is meeting someone, then you just kind of keep at it. And so right now it might involve maybe a web-based date for a little while. Maybe there's more opportunities for actually communicating and connecting. One thing that I have seen is, because I think people are really looking for genuine connections and meaningful relating, some of the noise of the past couple of years around dating and not really looking for genuine moments of connection, but more just kind of wanting to meet tons of people, I think that subsided a little bit. And there's just a lot of people out there that are hungry for really a meaningful conversation and to relate to someone in genuine ways. So with the pandemic are some shifts in the needs of people, and I think a lot of people are feeling it. So that offers more opportunities of individuals that maybe are in the dating pool and actually genuinely looking for a relationship. Next topic or concept that I would throw out is good enough living. And so by that, I mean removing the shackles, as I put it, of perfectionism. So sometimes we might have an idea of how it's supposed to go, and how in our mind's eye, I can't I don't know, throw my kids a birthday party unless it's the perfect birthday party, and I can't write this email unless I know exactly what I'm going to say. And that really can get in the way of just taking that next step forward in life. And so this is a really good time to practice, work the good enough muscle, and And so in order to achieve your goals and live the life that you want to live, that means sometimes it's just going for good enough. And so it doesn't mean giving up on and just going for a completely terrible job, but just saying, you know what, I'm just going to tolerate right now. So these are just some images in my own home environment. So normally I'm someone who likes to put things away, and I really don't like to see things, balls left on the floor that my kids have left, or towels left. I like to I stick things away even if it doesn't look perfectly neat. I do like everything to be in its place, and that's just not feasible right now, and I have to tolerate those moments. And each time I tolerate it, my brain is learning it can handle discomfort. Even if I don't like it, it doesn't mean I can't handle it, and then I'm going to get stronger. Another example of the art table, there would be a time when I would try to have it wiped down a little better and not have paint everywhere. But this is good enough. And if I'm having meaningful moments of life, then I'm going to have to tolerate some things that aren't the way I would like them to be. And we all have to kind of work on that. Another tip that I would offer would be watching social media usage. And from a couple of different angles, I'd say it could really negatively impact mental health. And that could be from creating stress in your core relationships, where maybe you have different political beliefs from friends or family, but these are still important people in your life. And there just might be more time, we're all having more time to read the news and be armchair news analysts and consider how we feel about the world, and that's a good opportunity. But then there are more opportunities for conflicts that might not really lead to changing each other's positions, but might create more tension and stress, and then maybe even avoidance of relationships that are important to you. So I would say kind of check in with yourself as you're on social media and notice, like, is it actually increasing my sense of vitality? Am I feeling more inspired? Or am I feeling more weighed down? Do I have a pit in my stomach? And really kind of do a body scan. And if it's taking away more than it's offering, then really actively working on cutting it down. Because in some ways, the area of the brain that relates to addiction and kind of that dopamine rush of the excitement of the excitement area of the brain can also be associated with instant rushes with social media, with technology. So even if we know it's not good for us, actually starting to decrease our behavior isn't the easiest thing in the world, but it's not impossible. I'd also say another challenge with social media is like a unique form of FOMO, in terms of, wow, I'm just not doing the pandemic right. Look at all these other people, and they're using this time to really build pillow forts with their kids and do all these homemade projects and come together and read and learn, and I'm just binging on Netflix, and I'm missing out on these beautiful moments that maybe I should be finding of making meaning. And however we're doing it, we're just trying to get through the day, and that's okay. So yeah, this was a little bit more kind of on the FOMO front, but also in that it's okay to not be okay. And so there might be moments that you feel inspired and feel that through these challenging times, you're learning resilience and we're coming together, and that's quite lovely and good. But there's also going to be times that you might feel really angry and feel really frustrated and feel sad and a range of negative emotions, and those are all valid too. And the healthiest thing that we can do is really make room for the range of emotions and not try to not have that which we actually are having. The process of trying to not be scared or not be angry kind of backfires, and it goes from a clean, hard emotion to just kind of a dirty, uncomfortable, diffuse state. So it's much better just to kind of have the emotion that you have, and then it'll pass, like everything else, when we allow ourselves to have it. So this image here, I was showing, I think, one of my kids, like, oh, we could make some art. And at some point I said we could do some chalk art and showed some inspiring images. And my daughter came up with the image, not to the left, but the one to the right, or I might be getting it wrong for the viewers, but the less positive image. But in some ways, A, I thought it was very beautiful, I have to say, and B, it really reflected the frustration of her current, the losses that she's having and her current life. And there's a place for that too. So as I said here, having a difficult time doesn't make you broken. It just makes you human, and we're all going to have those moments and those emotions. So another key tip, I would say, this is a great time to consider working your mindfulness muscle. And I know, I'm sure all of us have heard different times encouraging developing a mindfulness practice, and, oh, mindfulness is so good, or maybe some mindful eating, or maybe you have some reaction that just sounds very hokey or just kind of out there. But actually, it's really just simply a form of learning to pay attention to the current moment and learning how to anchor your attention where you want to put it versus going off in every which direction wherever your mind chooses to take you. So I like to tell the clients I work with, it's kind of like our mind is this puppy that's very active and wants to kind of go off in all these different directions. And sometimes we need to actually walk the puppy and steer it in a direction and not just kind of follow behind it and let it drag us whichever way it wants to go. So through the act of mindfulness, we can choose, right now, I want to anchor my attention on this moment with my family, or right now, I want to anchor my attention on this work. And I might have the thought, oh no, what is the school year going to be? Or, oh no, how is my business going to be okay? And these thoughts are going to pop up, but I could choose to go down the rabbit hole with them, or I could choose not to. I can't stop the thoughts, but I can, number one, work the muscle of noticing when a thought or sensation comes up, and then compassionately just disengaging from that content if I choose to, and then return to the current moment and where I want to put my attention. So it takes work, and so I have this little brain holding a weight because it's not easy. It really feels like you just maybe have to catch your mind wandering off, and then 3 seconds later, there you go again. And every time you catch your attention, you put it back, you're strengthening that mindfulness muscle. So I have a lot of clients that say, like, oh, it's not working, I don't feel relaxed. And that's because you're not going to feel relaxed. You're not going to be like the om and just kind of sitting there with the sun lighting you up and feeling it. It's really hard work, but the payoff comes through a decreased stress response, through just overall increased life satisfaction as you're able to attend to what's important to you, not what your mind chooses for you to attend to. So I'm not going to right now do this 1-minute exercise, but I am going to kind of walk through what I would recommend. Actually, maybe I will, because I deserve it, and whoever's watching this right now, I think you deserve it too. So we'll do a 1-minute mindfulness exercise where, and it's really important to have this experiential exercise because it can sound so complicated, and it's super duper simple to practice mindfulness. The only hard thing to do is actually getting yourself to do it. Kind of like it's super simple to go for a walk, or it's super simple to maybe do 10 jumping jacks, but getting ourselves to do the things that are good for us, that's the hard part. So for this exercise, what we're going to do for 1 minute, just focus our attention on our breath. And we're just going to notice the in-breath, and then notice the out-breath. And then we're just going to anchor our attention to our breath. And just as a side note, the reason we're anchoring our attention to the breath is because it's just an easy stimuli, because we always have it on us, versus, say, we want to anchor our attention to a bell, or to maybe a painting, or anchor our attention to something on the outside. We just might not have it with us at the time we want to practice. But the good news is we do have our breath on us. Just one side note, for some individuals I work with who have panic disorder or tendency to get really anxious about their breathing patterns, that would be the only exception. I'd say maybe don't focus on your breath if you're someone who tends to get really hypervigilant and kind of anxious when focusing on your breath. Then I would just pick an outside anchor, like maybe feel the weight of your feet as it's making contact on the floor. So just kind of put your attention on your feet if you're someone who gets triggered by your breath. So all we're going to do is for 1 minute, just notice our breath, like the in breath and the out breath. And then every time we get distracted, we're just going to notice that thought. And maybe we could even label it like, oh, worry about the fall, or maybe notice like thought, why am I even doing this? This is so stupid, return. So we're just going to notice what distracted us and then gently bring our attention back to our breath. And we're going to do this for 1 minute. So I'm going to set a timer right now, and then we can get started. So for 1 minute, starting now, just focus on your breath and notice the distraction, and then just bring your attention back gently to the breath. Okay, that was almost a minute. And since there's not a live audience with me right now, I'll just kind of say for myself, within that 1 minute, which by the way, I really highly recommend for anyone who just cheated on that exercise and waited to move forward, I would say go give yourself a moment to do it, because it's amazing how long 1 minute can feel if you give yourself 1 minute. And I could just say for myself, like the thoughts that popped up were, does this even make sense? Return. Wow, I can't believe this is still a minute. Return. This is so funny that I'm doing this, and I wonder if anyone's thinking, if they're just listening right now and there's no sounds, I wonder if they're confused. Return. So we all have monkey minds that are going to offer up lots of content, and what we could then choose is to engage with that content or choose to return and put our attention where we most value. And there's tons of great resources out there on mindfulness. I have no financial relationship, but I do highly recommend Headspace. I highly recommend Headspace. It's really quite lovely. What I like is it breaks up the mindfulness exercise in really small units. I also have a website. There's a mindfulness exercise, and it's free if you want to practice, called Think Mindfully. So you're welcome to check that out as well. So other tips and suggestions for managing these challenging times, and also really all times, is getting up and getting moving. So actually, I'm going to stand up right now. I have to say, I've been sitting doing work for the last way too many hours, and it's, it starts increasing your stress when you're stuck in a crunched over position, or no matter how good your office chair is, like, for too long. And so I really recommend, as we're still, a lot of us working from home, and maybe having some Zoom meetings, you could do a walk and talk meeting if your coworkers don't mind not seeing you, and getting some exercise. Maybe reminding yourself to take movement breaks and actually setting an alarm, or putting your computer on lock so that you have to stand up for a few minutes, and just 2 jumping jacks or a small squat can make a big difference in decreasing your stress response. And then I would just recommend having different movement encouraging tools, like I put it, throughout your home. So I have here like a spooner board. It's basically like this little swivel board. I have like a tiny little trampoline around the house. Sometimes just getting up and getting water is super important, just to remind me to get those steps in. So anytime you could take, and the good news is these days, elevators are a little less desirable anyway, so all the more opportunities to take stairs, and your mind, by moving, your mind will feel unstuck and better able to take in new information. And then the last suggestion I have is just not going at it alone, meaning, you know, we all have coping skills, and that's great, and a lot of things we can accomplish, but there's nothing wrong with reaching out and finding a therapist to work with you. And so I have a link here to the ADAA, the Anxiety Depression Association of America, their website, and I am on, what am I? I am the co-chair of the Public Education Committee, and it's a wonderful organization, has tons of free resources and webinars to provide treatment information, empirically supported treatment, meaning there's information showing that it works. And there's a link to the Find a Therapist directory, and those are providers that practice cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and offer action-oriented practical tools and tips to help you move forward. And I always tell people, it doesn't have to be a big deal. You don't have to be in therapy for years. Something doesn't have to be super wrong. Sometimes you could have one session or a few sessions, and just getting that person on the sidelines that are cheering you on and offering you a different perspective can go a long way. So similar to going to the gym, if we are going to the gym these days, whenever we go back to the gym, could you go alone? Sure, but if you have a trainer there encouraging you, pushing you, pointing out that you can do it, even when you don't think you can you maybe get more done? Is it more likely that you're going to show up for yourself? Probably. It's kind of a luxury. You know, a lot of people don't see mental health support that way, but I really see it as everyone is whole and can go at it alone, but we shouldn't have to. And I think that is all slide-wise. So we might have a few questions that people wrote in ahead of time that I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, so one question was how people should cope with their anxiety about having to go back to work when they may not feel that it's safe yet.
Well, I would say number one, it's okay. I think some amount of anxiety certainly is reasonable, and I would say get informed. So step one, I would say just educate yourself, speak with your employer. What are their policies that they're going to have? What are they doing to protect employees? What kind of protocols are in place if there were to be some kind of exposure? I would just, a high quality employer should have policies that it should share with you to get you somewhat acclimated with the new world order within your place of employment. But then within that, there's always going to be some kind of uncertainty. And so and then after that, if you are going to go back, if it makes sense for your life anyway, they're just not going to be guarantees. But the truth is, there was never a guarantee when you left the house to go to work that something awful wasn't going to, there's not a guarantee that the bus that you're on might not get in an accident, or that, you know, sometimes we have this illusion of certainty and this illusion of control that is always there anyway. Eventually we kind of have to decide that the risks, there's some risk left and things have been mitigated to the amount that they're going to be mitigated, and then we just have to proceed forward with our life as best we can. Okay.
Another question we got was what to suggest for people who may be more rural or not otherwise have internet access to go to look for people to meet up with or kind of have the same resources available as if they were in a urban area where there are lots of walking and volunteer
Right.
opportunities.
Right. Well, you know, as a as a resident of Chicago, it's a little bit more complicated for me to think this through. But I would say, I would hope within your local contacts that sort of arranging within your local network to go on a hike together, to go on a walk, to arrange some kind of activity, maybe to meet up at a park somewhere and find ways to connect. And so, like I said, I really think it really is more complicated these days, and we have to work harder to get those connections, but it's not impossible. We just kind of have to sometimes get creative, maybe talk to others in our community, like, what are you doing to stay sane? Like, have you found any places where people are maybe eating, you know, more likely to have an outside picnic that I could be around other people, but still feel, you know, that there's still safety and distance. And those, if we share information and suggestions with those living in our community, there's, you know, it really does take a village to get through all times, especially complicated times.
And the last question we got was, what can people do to help prevent their healthy behaviors, like hand washing frequently, from becoming unhealthy? How do you kind of tamper those coping mechanisms from going too far and becoming unhealthy?
Yeah, well, I would just say when one is engaging in a compulsion, it, like, such as hand washing to make anxiety go away, or hand washing to feel just right, it's you kind of know it because there's this sense of urgency. If I don't wash right now, something really bad is going to happen, and I have to keep washing till I feel just right. When you're washing your hands, okay, they're saying I should wash through singing the ABCs for 20 seconds, like, okay, I'm doing it. There's not this immediate relief. There's just a sense of kind of like when you put on your seatbelt, it's not like, okay. It's like, this is what I'm doing now because this is what is considered safety. So if you get this extreme, urgent, anxious feeling if you don't do it, and this insta relief if you do, you're more in this compulsion zone. And really, from the clients I've seen with contamination OC, it's pretty clear to them it could be the same behavior. Like, now they're washing their hands because of just COVID and protecting themselves and those around them, and they might have used hand washing as a compulsion, but it's very clear to them that it has a different function, the behavior, and it feels different. So it's more of a fear that my clients who have OCD have of, oh no, that's gonna become a compulsion. But I think what they're realizing is when it's done, because this is the current recommendations, it feels very different and it's not becoming a compulsion. I would say, though, for people who've never been diagnosed with OCD that maybe had subclinical, that they don't even know what to look out for, I have seen what's starting to look more like OCD compulsions beyond just following the health recommendations, because it's such a new terrain. For those that have really worked on their OCD, they know what to look for and what to be careful of. So that's been kind of interesting.
Great. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for attending. If you need a certificate of completion, please email mhalpern@mhanational.org. Thank you.